All right, at this point, we will go on a quick break, but let's just let you know that we have Femi Lawson, the National Secretary of the Campaign for Democracy, as guest, and also, of course, we would have Nelson Ekujumi, is the Executive Director, Center for Rights and Grassroots Initiative. Stay with us. We will be right back. Of course, joining me right now to do a critical deep dive into the just concluded Anambra State governorship election is Femi Lawson, is the National Secretary of the Campaign for Democracy. Thank you for your time. All right, Femi. Of course, I know that your organization, that's of course the Campaign for Democracy, was on ground during the entire process of the election in governorship election in Anambra State. Now, this election was pretty much in a way pivotal because for INEC, for instance, it was a test of grit for its new leadership. Would you say they outdid themselves?
Dr. Thank you once again for having me. I must say that what was witnessed in Anambra on Saturday shows that the new leadership of INEC under Professor Amokito is determined not only to consolidate on the achievement of his predecessor, but to also ensure that our elections get as transparent as we desire as Nigerians. I can tell you that as at 7 p.m. on Saturday, not less than over 90% of the results have been uploaded from across the polling units where elections were held in Anambra State. Very fantastic and awesome performance on the part of INEC, and it's one major step forward in our quest as Nigerians, as civil society, as the media, towards ensuring that our elections become so electronic to the point that without unnecessarily waiting at the collation centers, without unnecessarily anticipating if political talks are going to hijack our election results or not, in the comfort of our homes, we can see the outcome of our elections. And that is one thing INEC was able to do on Saturday. And I must give kudos to INEC, particularly under this new leadership, for its readiness to ensure that our elections are transparent.
All right. If you were to score this process that we witnessed in Anambra State, the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, what would you give it?
Well, for me, I'll give INEC 7.
7?
But I think it's important I say this as a basis for scoring INEC 7. Elections, and we have kept on emphasizing on this, election is not the business of INEC alone. There are key stakeholders within the electoral chain that gives you the outcome of every election. You have the INEC as the election umpire, you have the security agencies, you have the media, you have the civil society, you have the political parties, all playing very fundamental roles in our elections. So INEC can bring all its resources, provide logistics, ensure compliance, and if other stakeholders didn't play their role, we will not have an entirely prudent process. So if perhaps I've scored INEC low, it's not because INEC, I've scored INEC 7 out of 10, just like you said. It's not because INEC wasn't ready to get 10 over 10 as far as its preparedness for that election is concerned. Of course, there are glitches when the election started, as far as the biometric, the capturing machine for accreditation is concerned, and some other few logistical issues. But the truth is that we must, in looking at the transparency of our elections, credibility of our elections, look at the role of other stakeholders. What roles did our security agencies play during the election? What roles did the political parties play during the election? What roles have we played as media and civil society during the elections? That is what we can holistically use to determine the credibility of an election, not just the role of INEC.
So just to pick up from there, without INEC being in isolation, right, let's look at other players, key players, civil society, the political parties, the entire process itself, the gamut itself. If you were to score it 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, what would you give it?
I could comfortably score INEC 7, like I said.
Not INEC, the entire process, compared to previous elections.
Overall, it's nothing less than 7 over 10.
Still 7 over 10, because I'm going to some issues that were experienced, during this polls. I mean, virtually all the political, not all, but at least the major ones, had something to complain about, including the ruling party. And that's the issue of vote buying, which they claimed was pretty much widespread. I remember that the governor of the state who won the election, is the returning governor now, said that a particular candidate was even giving out 15,000 naira. Another candidate, the AAC candidate, said about 5,000 naira too was given to induce voters. So the issue of vote buying came up. Then in some parts, low voter turnout, logistical challenges, security concerns were also raised. So, is 7 really, looking at the quality of election, in terms of expectation, is 7, would you say that is fair in lieu of all of these challenges that have been highlighted?
For me, that is why I stated in the initial that scoring the outcome of our election may not necessarily be determined by the performance of INEC alone. I've been part of election monitoring and observation in Nigeria and other countries, at least for about 20 years, and I can tell you that the conduct of the political class in Nigeria is one of the most despicable. But on the long run, when elections are conducted and after it, everybody comes and starts punching INEC. Let me tell you one thing. As observed in Anambra and every other elections we have had, for instance, in Anambra, November 8th election on Saturday, we have more turnout of voters than we had during the election that brought in Professor Soludo in his first term. It means there was an impressive turnout of voters, but that was not it. Can anybody within the political class, particularly the major political party, come out today in Anambra and raise this or our own hand up of not attempting to induce voters? If you have seen politicians who didn't share cash, they have shared 6 head of fabrics, some shared rice, some.
But these same politicians, are the ones coming out to say that what they observed is that monies was being shared, and they claim not to be the ones.
They are doing that. Do you know why they are doing that? We have made INEC the scapegoat of every elections in Nigeria. Every elections, everybody wait for the outcome, and those start bashing INEC. Oh, there was vote buying. Police allowed. But the truth is that these same people making these allegations are the culprits. If you talk about vote buying are not usually a process undertaken by INEC, the media, or the civil society. This is a core practice that has become entrenched in our system by desperate politicians, cutting across major political parties in Nigeria. So the only time you find these characters coming out to complain about vote buying is when they are outpaid, during the attempt to purchase the votes from our people. Sometimes they come with 5,000, and another political party, for instance, come with 10,000. The superior firepower of Naira notes then comes into play. Then they get outplayed by the virtue of their strength to deploy Naira and Kobo to buy votes. But if they were successful in purchasing votes like they have attempted to, from our observation, there was no party in the Anambra governorship election that can swear that its agents or leaders never attempted to induce voters, either at the polling point or before the elections. There are people who are giving out fabrics, like I said. There are people who are giving out food, items, even before the election. These are all voters' inducement. They are not only about people who paid cash for vote on election day. We have seen politicians who went on campaign and were giving food products and were giving fabrics to women and were making false promises to women. These are vote buying in the real sense of it. So the Nigerian political class do not really have the moral, authority to accuse one or the other of vote buying as far as their conduct is concerned, because prior to the election, none of them have shown the willingness or the determination to ensure that they are ready to be part of this election in a transparent manner.
But what do you think continues to give them the, well, I use the word effrontery now, to still induce voter? Because, I mean, if you look at the basic law of economics, sometimes they'll tell you where there is no demand, there's no supply. And we have laws against this. But in spite of the laws, every election cycle, this issue still comes up.
In our own case, based on my experience, I haven't been part of the electoral process, I haven't observed the elections. Against the popular economic terms of where there's no demand, there's no supply, what led to vote buying in the Nigerian electoral system was a situation whereby there was a supply and eventually we had demand. It was the political class that introduced voters' inducement into our elections. I was old enough to witness the June 12th presidential election in Nigeria. I witnessed the 98, 99 local government, National Assembly and presidential election in Nigeria. This culture of vote buying, even in 2023, 2003, 2007, was not as entrenched. People were still voting for candidates of their choice. In Lagos, in 2003, when the PDP came ravaging the Southwest, the people of Lagos stood firm and voted the then Governor Bola Tinubu against, the inducement, the intimidation, and the harassment of the PDP in the federal government. We have seen situations where in states like Ekiti, in states like, some other part of the country, where people have stood their ground to vote candidates of their choice against the intimidation of the federal government and inducement. But today, it's a free-for-all market. It is like a bazaar. The way politicians now induce voters, it is now a competition between the political parties for who can pay the highest to get voters induced and get them vote for their political parties. So we must and we cannot stop, blaming the Nigerian political parties, particularly political parties, for their involvement, for their role in entrenching the culture of vote buying in our country, unfortunately.
I mean, there's this phrase they use, in this conversation. They'll say the weaponization of poverty, and that people, even look forward to this money is because of the state of the economic condition. Does this also play a key role?
You see, the truth is that, of course, in my adult life of over 40 years, I've lived in this country and I've seen poverty. Nigerians have never lived, so well enough to the extent that we could say that I've never lived in prosperity in this country beyond personal effort and our works as individuals. The nation has never been prosperous enough to take care of our needs in my entire adult life, and I know for a lot of us as Nigerians. But we had a society where discipline, contentment and the likes was there. In 1993, June 12th, my dad was an artisan in Ibadan. My mother was a food vendor, and I know people who were chat pushers. I know women who were roasting yam on the walkway of Agbo shopping complex, who were in the sun to queue, and they voted for Chief Eku Abiola in the June 12, 1993 election for the SDP candidate. I was here in 98, 99, when the people of the Southwest voted against a candidate who was a Yoruba, a former president, a former head of state, a very rich, popular person, General Olusegun Obasanjo. When we voted against him to support the candidate of the Alliance for Democracy, when we voted against what was perceived as a national party to vote for the Alliance for Democracy, Nigerians have always been poor. But what is missing now is the culture of integrity, the culture of decency, and the manipulation of our electoral process by the ruling elite in Nigeria. So poverty to me is not an excuse. What can 5,000, 10,000 naira do in the life of a family man that will make you vote for a candidate that will determine what your life becomes in the next 4 years? It is not just about poverty. It is the manipulation of the electoral process. It is the manipulation of the mindset of our people. Nigerians have always been poor. There's never been a time that we don't talk about inflation in the 80s and the 90s. We talk about inflation in food prices. We talk about inflation in social amenities. But that never took away the common sense of our people. But today, the common sense of our people is being taken away by the manipulation of the political class.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Femi Lawson, for your time on the program this evening, National Secretary of the Campaign for Democracy. It's been a pleasure. Once again, thank you for your time.